There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I'm excited to have you guys here today. We have a very special show. I'm excited about the guest we have today, and I think you will be too. So I want to tell you, The Productive Podcaster is a podcast for podcasters. It is set up to help you to be more productive. So whether that means to you bringing in more listeners, getting more downloads, getting more money from your podcast, getting more sponsors, or just being able to touch more people, whatever it is to you, we want to help you to be the most productive you can be as you podcast with the information and the guests that we bring to you here on The Productive Podcaster. So we start off every episode with one thing that we like to call pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
And what pros and cons is, it's a way for us to help you by giving you some advice to help you with your podcast so that you don't encounter some of the pitfalls that many other podcasters do. Today, I want to talk to you about social media, putting a schedule out and automating your social media, because if you can do these things, it can save you a lot of time and energy in trying to organically reach people to get them to listen to your podcast. Now, there are a lot of sites out there that allow you to actually schedule posts. That's right. Some of you may know this already, but there are sites out there that let you schedule your posts so that you can reach your audience and let them know what's going on with your podcast, when they can listen to it and that it's up and down, uploaded and so forth. Well, the thing is, you got to use them. You got to use them. So schedule your post. Put a post out there, letting them know. And you can use several sites when you're doing this, but they go to several. So here's the thing. When you use Twitter is a great platform for broadcasting. If you have a large audience and you want to reach out to a network with companies or journalists and so forth, send it out to Twitter. You have Facebook. Everyone knows about Facebook. Facebook is a powerful, powerful tool. If you want to network with people, reach your followers. Here's the thing. It may not be the best to promote to businesses, but you can start groups. You can start tribes on Facebook that will follow you everywhere you go. You can do that with Facebook. Then you have LinkedIn. LinkedIn is designed for businesses, especially if you have a serious topic. If you have a serious topic, if you really want to engage in people, LinkedIn, get people to follow you. If you go on a blog, whatever, they will follow you on LinkedIn. Then there's Google Plus. Google lets you do a whole lot of different things with Google itself, because Google does so many different things. But a main thing you can talk about is traffic. Google can help you with traffic. Then, of course, you have Pinterest. Pinterest is still there. You can actually build brands and so forth with Pinterest. Instagram is another one. Wow, Instagram. A lot of younger people are using Instagram, but it's a great way to get your message out and get your images out and get videos out. You can do Instagram stories, and it's a whole lot you can do with Instagram. And I want to go back to Facebook. You can do Facebook stories as well. Then you have Snapchat. Snapchat seemed to have a short life, it seemed, but a lot of younger people are using it. Snapchat, you can do a lot of branding with it as well with Snapchat. Now you can use scheduling sites like Hootsuite and some of the other ones to schedule them, putting all these in one, and you can schedule your post to go out so you don't have to sit there every day at a certain time sending your post out. It's a great way for you to get your podcast promoted. That is pros and cons for today. I want to thank you for joining me for that segment. Guess what? When we come back from our break, we're going to have a very, very special guest, the one and only Mr. Myron Golden. Stay tuned to The Productive Podcaster, and we will be right back.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how?
Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. I have a special guest coming right now. This gentleman I have known for a number of years, and he has helped me and he's helped a lot of people grow their businesses. He's also created a lot of millionaires out of this. So this is someone you definitely want to hear. And he has a podcast that is doing wonderful because it's doing great work as well. So I want to introduce to you none other than Mr. Myron Golden. Myron, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Barrett. Appreciate that. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. First of all, tell people what it is that you do as Myron Golden, the business consultant. What do you do?
I teach people how to sell from stage. I teach people how to sell high ticket offers, how to grow their business exponentially, but to do all of that using biblical principles.
Now, biblical principles, you, in my opinion, you are probably one of the most knowledgeable people on the Bible that I have ever met.
You desperately need to meet more people.
Well, okay. Duly noted. I do need to meet more people. But let's face it. Because you told me yourself, you've been studying the Bible since you were a teenager.
Since I was a teenager, for 42 years.
For 42 years. So I don't know too many people that can still move around, that have been studying that long.
Touche.
Let's face it, most of us, we are familiar with the Bible at 16, but we don't study it at that age. And you began studying at that age, which, like I said, and you never stopped. So that right there has put you in a different stratosphere as far as I'm concerned with people who are biblical scholars, so to speak. Now, because of that, you decided to take that into another area, which is success, because your podcast, Bible Success Principle. Was it Bible Success?
Secrets.
I'm sorry.
Bible Success Secrets.
Bible Success Secrets. Now the thing is, when it comes to success, how did you put that word in there with the Bible? Why did you tie that together?
That's a good question. So, because everything that God ever created, He created to succeed. He created the sun to shine, it shines. Birds to fly, they fly. Wind to blow, it blows. Water to flow, it flows. He created human beings to be in dominion. And human beings are the only thing that God created that oftentimes don't succeed. And the reason we don't succeed, I believe, is because we have a choice.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. Well said. Now, Bible says secrets. So what are the secrets? Why secrets?
Well, they're not secrets because God wants them to keep them a secret, but they're secrets because few people know about them, and few people talk about them for whatever reason, and so therefore they don't get the benefit of those secrets. And another concept of a secret is something that is valuable that only a few people know about. And well, there's nothing more valuable, I believe, than the practical principles in Scripture. See, people think the Bible is a book about religion.
Yeah.
The Bible is a governmental document, and it governs every molecule in this universe. And some people say, well, I don't believe the Bible. That's okay. The Bible doesn't need you to believe it any more than oxygen needs you to believe in oxygen in order for you to believe it. It is what it is, right? And so I believe that God has given us principles on how to make the work we do work in the scripture. And if we do it the way he said do it, it works every single time. And so that's why Bible success secrets, because when we discover these secrets and then we develop ourselves according to these secrets and then we deploy ourselves into the marketplace using these secrets, the success that we have is absolutely dynamic.
Now, you said that we don't know these things for whatever reason. What is your opinion is the reason why we don't know something?
Because when we look at the Bible, we look at it through religious colored glasses. And we're looking at it for something to know instead of for something to do. And so many people want to know, quote, know the Bible.
Yeah.
But Christ himself said, he said, if any man will do his will, he shall know the doctrine. In other words, if you don't do what you know, you don't get to know any more than you know. And some things can only be learned by the doing of the thing.
Wow. So that being said, what made you begin a podcast on this?
Because business is a passion of mine. I love business. I think business is a good idea because business is a God idea. I like the game, the challenge, if you will, the exercise of making money. I like that. And the Bible speaks a lot about it. And most people think that God is against people having money, and they think God is against business, and they think, well, God would never create something like that. They think like wealth and money and prosperity is satanic. Well, the reality is Christ said, I am come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. So abundance is godly. And he said, the thief cometh not but for to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So lack is actually evil. Not implying that people who lack are evil, but definitely not just implying, but stating, insisting that if you practice evil, the end result will be some form of lack or poverty.
Got it. Now, with your podcast, because I love it. I love the podcast. I listen to it when I'm driving. I've been on road trips, so I'm just listening to your podcast all the way up. Oh yeah, I love it. And you take a lot of the scripture and you tie it in with life and business as well, because it's not just about business, it's just about life. As you said, the Bible is a manual on what to do. And in doing that, what kind of feedback have you gotten from people who listen to your podcast?
Everybody who communicates with me about it, I'm sure this is not the true case for everybody, but everybody who communicates with me about it, the feedback is always mind blown. And it's interesting, like a lot of people say what you said, well, I tie the scriptures together with business principles or practical, but I don't tie it. I don't tie it together. I just never untied it. See, people think I'm making the connection. I'm not making the connection. The connection was already there. I just didn't remove the connection because I had an ulterior motive.
So
let it say what it says.
So in other words, other people have already untied it. That's why they think that there's a tie there.
That's why they think that's why they think that I've done something, because all of the teachers they've ever heard have already untied the application that was already there. I didn't. It was already in the Bible when I woke up this morning. I didn't add it.
Yeah, and that's true, because most of us, when we think Bible, we don't think business.
No.
And
when I think Bible,
we think business, we don't think Bible. So yeah, and I get it.
They don't think Bible. Yeah. When they think family, they don't think Bible. And when they think friendships, they don't think Bible. But when I think of anything, the best way to have a good anything is to do it according to biblical principles.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And with your podcast, how long have you been running it now?
So shame on me.
Shame on you.
Shame on me. I think I did 29 episodes.
Okay.
29 episodes a year and a half ago.
Wow. Well, here's the great thing about that, Myron. So not shame on you. Principles have not changed.
They have not changed in the last year and a half.
So they still apply.
They still apply. But I also have a Facebook group called Bible Success Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach the same concepts in there, the same kinds of concepts in there that I teach in my podcast. And I've been doing that for 6 years. So
and you record that as well, right?
I record it. It's in the Facebook group, Bible Success Secrets. And there are literally hundreds of hours of me teaching biblical success principles.
So we just need to put that into the podcast.
Well, but I use that content for something else.
Gotcha.
That's why. Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Fair enough.
Facebook group and for something else, and that's why it's not a part of the podcast.
Fair enough. So that there won't be a repurposing on that, at least in that vein.
Not from that to that,
right?
But there is a repurposing from
Gotcha.
Facebook to something else.
Now, I want to bring this up because your podcast topic and subject matter is different than most podcasts, and it's definitely a blue ocean, so to speak.
I would concur.
You would concur. Okay.
I concur.
So, I'm bringing this up because a lot of people that I talk to who are cautious about starting a podcast, they always wonder, do I have an audience? Does anyone want to hear what I have to say? Now, I know you've never thought that way, but what do you say to those people that think that?
Go to the grocery store, go to the magazine rack, and just count the number of categories that there are magazines on. Turn on your television and count the number of channels there are and count the number of shows on all kinds of different topics. And that will let you know that if you are doing green-eyed cats from Antigua, you're going to have somebody who's an audience for that subject matter.
That's true. That is true. I told someone recently, I think I mentioned on one of my other episodes, that I went to a conference earlier this year on podcasting. And there are people from all over the world there doing podcasts. Some of the weirdest topics I had ever heard of.
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking about just people who were like, got their podcast. I'm talking about these are the speakers. These are the presenters have some of the oddest topics. And I'm like, wow, there's a podcast for everything.
Everything. Absolutely.
It's amazing to me. So, I mean, please listen to what Myron said. Go to the grocery store, look at the magazine, change your channels. There's a podcast for everything. Now, Bible Success Secrets. Now, there are different versions of the Bible.
Sure.
How do you approach that?
So, first of all, I understand that translation is commentary. So what do I mean by that? It is impossible to translate scripture from one language to another without adding some form of commentary. For instance, if I were to say to you, what was Jesus's occupation? You would say he was a
carpenter.
A carpenter, right. But the reality is, biblically speaking, he wasn't a carpenter. He was a builder. Now, why do I say that? Well, if you've ever been to Israel, you know they have no forests.
Right.
Which means if you don't have forest, you don't have wood, you don't have lumber. If you don't have lumber, you can't be a carpenter.
Right.
Right. But when they translated the Bible into English, because the resource in Israel, almost every house is built out of stone.
Right.
And not almost every house. All the houses are built out of stone. You're not going to find wooden buildings in Israel. Anyway, I've been to Israel, 2 or 3 times. I've never seen a wooden building in Israel. Okay. There's very little wood.
Right.
And the wood that is, it's like olive trees that have like, the trunk is not but that big around.
Right.
So, Myron, what's your point? My point is, when the English people translated it from builder into English, a builder in England was a carpenter. So they translated to carpenter. So what I do when I'm studying the Bible is I use resources to help me study the original word, the definitions of the original words in the original language. I use the King James Version of the Bible predominantly, and I use the complete Jewish Bible. And then I use resources like Strong's Concordance, like an interlinear Bible, like the Etymological Biblical Dictionary of Hebrew. And I use these different Bible study tools to look up the words in their original language, in the original meaning of those words in the original language, so that I don't get somebody's interpretation of what God said. I can actually know exactly what God said.
I get it. I totally get it. And I asked it. I'd already talked to you about that before, and I remember us talking about this. I wanted to have you explain that to me because I know someone out there listening is saying, "Well, which version of the Bible?" Because you do teach on it, and I don't know if I'm going to have you delve into that a little bit as to why the King James version.
Well, it was the first. I speak English, right? So it was the first language. I mean, it's the first translation into the English language, the King James Bible. Even though it's impossible to translate the Bible word for word from Hebrew to English, because there are some Hebrew words for which there are no English words.
Right.
The New Testament was written in Greek because Alexander the Great had taken over the world and Hellenized the world and made Greek the worldwide language, the one world language. And so the New Testament was written in Greek. There are some Greek words for which there are no English equivalents. Mm-hmm. And so I use the King James because it's translated from a more accurate original text. So the original text, I'm not going to go into great detail. The original text, the King James is translated from, is called the Textus Receptus, which means the received text, the authorized received text. The translation that the NIV and some of these other translations are translated from is what's known as the Westcott and Hort, which was a corrupted translation. Corrupted from the standpoint that they use some of the same terms to describe Christ and Satan. For instance, in the Westcott and Hort, it says that a young woman shall conceive and bring forth a son. But in the Textus Receptus, it said a virgin shall conceive and bring forth a son. Well, you can be a young woman and not be a virgin, or you can be a virgin and not be a young woman.
True.
So to me, if you're starting with a text that is corrupted, and I believe the Westcott and Hort is corrupted, mm-hmm. then when you translate it into English, you're going to have not just a mistranslation, but you're going to have things that you're going to have the Bible saying things that the Bible never intended to say. The other reason is because Satan is a master at changing words, sure. Changing the meaning of words. And what Satan has done from the beginning of time is he has used God's word out of context to confuse people. Yeah. And so that's why people will say, yeah, but the King James Version is too hard to understand. And my question for people who say that is always, when does making something easier make it better?
And that right there, and see, I asked him that question, everybody, because I wanted to give you a reason as to why you should listen to Bible Success Secrets. The way he just broke that down is what you get when you listen to his podcast. Myron, tell everyone before we go how they can listen to your podcast.
You can find it on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you find your podcast. It's probably there because we syndicate to a bunch of different podcast services. And it's called Bible Success Secrets, 3 separate words. And I'm Myron Golden, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you. And you can also join our Facebook group, Bible Success Secrets. We've got, we've had, I don't know how many downloads, millions of downloads, of the podcast. But the Facebook group, we've got about, I think, 27 or 3,700 members, something like that. It's a bunch of folk.
Well, hopefully you'll make some more episodes, but
I will definitely make some more episodes.
Yes. All right. I mean, I know some of them you did while we were at live events. I remember being there, so that was cool. So Anyway, guys, look, Myron Golden, Bible Success Secrets. Make sure you check out his podcast. It's incredible. You will learn so much and it will help you grow and develop yourself. Myron, thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcast.
My pleasure, Barrett. Thank you for having me.
All right.
All right. Bye for now.
You've heard the rumblings. You even thought about starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Well, we're back here on The Productive Podcaster. Did I tell you, or did I tell you, Mr. Myron Golden is nothing but the truth. I am so glad he was gracious enough to join us on the show. The man is a multi-millionaire in business, and he's created other multi-millionaires in business, and we were honored to have him to be a part of The Productive Podcaster. Thank you, Myron. Appreciate you, my man. So guess what, guys? It is time now for PodQuest.
PodQuest.
Some of you love this segment. Some of you always have questions for PodQuest, and I appreciate you so much. PodQuest is basically the segment where we allow you, podcasters, and our audience to ask questions from our guests and from me about podcasting, about what you may be looking to do, some of the issues that you may be facing. We let you bring them up on PodQuest here. So PodQuest today, it's a question for Mr. Eric Twiggs. Eric was one of our guests, and he talked about productivity, and he does podcasts, a couple of them. He does podcasts himself, and he'll likely just pop up on anytime he wants to and do a podcast. I love Eric. And he's also a graduate of Hampton University like myself. But a question for Eric in PodQuest is, how do you maintain a work schedule with a podcast? Now, that's a great question. So we put that to Eric. And one of Eric's answers is that you have to plan it. You have to schedule it. And I agree with him. You have to put it down, write it on paper, and stick to it. You have to schedule it. Of course, if you have a 9-to-5, you know when you have to be at your 9-to-5. You don't have to do a daily podcast. You don't even have to do a weekly podcast. You can do a monthly podcast if you want to. But of course, the more consistent you are, the better. So if people know it's coming once a month, you better build up so that they know that once a month they want to listen to your podcast. If it's coming once a week, same thing. If it's coming daily, you still want to promote that podcast, but you have to schedule it. Make sure you schedule your work around your podcast and your podcast around your work. You can do both, but you have to schedule it. A lot of people are trying to fly by the seat of their pants and do it. And by doing that, that's when they run into the problem of, I don't have time. Bull, you have the time. You just haven't made the time to do the podcast and to do the work. Make the time. Trust me, you have the time in your day. Your podcast does not have to be an hour long. It doesn't even have to be 20 minutes long. It could be a 10-minute podcast. Our good friend Shay Brown, who's been on our show, Shay Brown used to do a 10-minute podcast before he became a happy entrepreneur. He was doing a 10-minute podcast every day. He was doing it, and he had people tuning in every day. So you can do the same thing. I want you just to focus on putting together a schedule and sticking to that schedule. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for the question. We appreciate that. It's now time for the podcast profile. This is where we profile someone out there who's doing the doggone thing in podcasting. And today we're going to showcase Amy Walker and Dr. Monica Ogando. Amy's a good friend of mine. I haven't seen her in years, but hey, Amy, I know you're always doing great things. And she has a podcast now with Dr. Monica Ogando called Your Circle of Influence. Check it out. Go check out Your Circle of Influence with Amy Walker and Dr. Monica Ogando. They are basically bringing in people who are centers of influence to talk to them, to find out what they know and how you can glean something from them to grow yourself in business and in your professional life. So check out the podcast, Your Circle of Influence with Amy Walker and Dr. Monica Ogando. It's a great podcast. I want you guys to make sure you listen to it and support them All right. Now it's time for one of my favorite parts. That's right. It's the giveaway. The giveaway. Y'all like the giveaway too. A lot of people want, hey, Barry, how can I get in the giveaway? Well, it's easy to get in the giveaway. You have to subscribe to the podcast and share it. Of course, everybody's not gonna get selected, but we have people that do get selected and they get a prize. Today, we are giving away, for those people who podcast, you get this, you get this, you get this. I hope you guys can see this clearly. It is the recording in progress sign you can put on your door when you're doing your podcast. I hope the reds don't clash too much, but you're gonna get that sent to you. And who is getting it today? Who can it be? It is Stacy Shiflett. Stacy Shiflett. She is getting that as well. So thank you, Stacy, for listening to the Productive Podcaster. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for sharing it with people, because that's what you have to do. You have to share it with people so that you too can get entered into the drawing to win a prize. Now, come to one of my favorite parts of the show. Y'all know what it is. It is time for the productivity quote. That's right, the productivity quote. Today's quote comes from Charles Caleb Colton. Charles Caleb Colton, and it reads, times of great calamity and confusion have been productive for the greatest minds. The purest ore is produced from the hottest furnace. The brightest thunderbolt is elicited from the darkest storm. Ooh, I need to read that again. Times of great calamity and confusion have been productive for the greatest minds. The purest ore is produced from the hottest furnace, and the brightest thunderbolt is elicited from the darkest storm. From Charles Caleb Colton. What does that say to me? Well, that says to me that it's in those dark times. It's when times are rough. And some of you may be experiencing some rough times right now. That's when you can be the most productive. Some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest creations came out of recessions, depressions, dark times. Because guess what? It creates voids. It creates needs. You can fill those voids. You can fill those needs. As a podcaster, you are a creative right now. You are creative. The world needs creatives right now. The world needs people who are going to use their mind to fill a void. Be that void filler. Be that person that can take on the challenge and make things great for other people around this world. I'm telling you, you can do this. Use your voice on your podcast to change lives. Use your voice to inspire someone to create something great. Use your voice to bring change about that's needed in this world. You can do it. I challenge you to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, that ends today's episode of The Productive Podcaster. I urge you, please make sure that you download, subscribe, and share with other people. Enter yourself into the drawing. Make sure that you ask us questions for PodQuest. We look forward to having you on our next episode. Thank you for joining me on The Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on The Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.